I've been working at Marshall Space Flight Center for 25 years on advanced propulsion, and we had some activity going on with antimatter propulsion. We've done stuff with fission and fusion, and like Les said, solar. So all the energy sources we were trying to look at how to utilize it for propulsion. Now the antimatter stuff I'm going to go over is stuff that we kind of had on the shelves for like the last 6 years. When we were in the constellation, we had to put a lot of that on the shelf. Now it's here a little late, so I don't know. There may be some charts I'm putting up that you all have seen already, but the distances I've seen some have identified how many AUs it takes to get to Alpha Centauri, which is like 4.3 light years away. And this is a picture that I've always liked, the Hubble Deep Field View. Just looking at one spot in the sky, seeing like 1,500 galaxies. I thought that was pretty intriguing. So that's what encourages. How can we travel around and explore all that's out there. This is another one that was showing what the delta V requirements were with AU. I have another chart I'm going to show, but really the delta velocity is also a factor of how quickly you want to get there. How much mass you're taking, etc. This is a chart that shows. Affected by a specific impulse and the change in mass, and also what was stated was the amount of chemical propellant that's needed for like an Alpha Centauri mission. So that's this line over here. It skyrockets. So what this shows is that each of these curves is for a different specific impulse, and I had just an example of what some propulsion concepts could do to achieve that. So if you're just like in the other inner solar system, some of these that have high specific impulses, you're not going to need a whole lot of propellant. If you want greater distances, you're going to need a lot more propellant. That's where this axis is what it's showing. And so this curve right here that's showing just a one-way flyby of Alpha Centauri for 60 years. This is having the highest ISP, which is in the millisecond range. And so this kind of shows you a range we have from chemical engines that have theoretically 500 seconds all the way up to a million. So that gives you a feel, a scope of what we have. And this is based on momentum exchange. How much propellant you throw out at what velocity. Now this is a chart that shows specific impulse versus thrust to weight. This shows each of these bubbles is a different propulsion concept. The colors are different based on like the maturity. What's been used in flight, what has a fairly good technology readiness level. Hasn't flown yet, but it's been demonstrated. And then you have a lot of concepts that are in the technology readiness level 1 through 3. You always want to try to have a goal here in this corner to have high specific impulse and have high thrust, so you get to your destination as quickly as possible. And antimatter had the best potential, for achieving that. I mean, I'm showing this is again based on different studies as well as experimental demonstrations. Okay, and also what's shown is it takes energy to go from one point to another. How much you have for your chemical energy release versus the antimatter. Now this is a proton antiproton annihilation that has about 1,000 times greater than fission and fusion. And then at the fusion, we were always looking at deuterium because it was easier to acquire. In fact, I was getting it from a welding shop for a lot of our experiments. And so all these energy sources, how they compare. So, but this one had the high potential. So again, we were trying to, in the past, look at the far edge of our boundaries in physics. And this is just another example how much energy you get. This is like 1 gram, equivalent to 23 external tanks of the space shuttle. So there's a lot of potent energy there. I think, like I said, you've seen charts before. What is antimatter? We were focusing more on antiprotons. There's positrons, but we were kind of looking at the antiprotons because it has a higher rest mass and higher potential, and plus we had a goal of trying to get into the anti-hydrogen too. When you're at low energy, low temperature, there's all kind of possibilities there. And this is, we have proton, antiproton annihilation, the first phase. I mean, eventually it all decays down. But we were more interested in the first level, where you have these pions. Some are positive, some are negative, some are neutral. But they existed for so many nanoseconds, and this gets to one of the concepts for propulsion, where if it exchanges momentum to your vehicle control volume, in other words, once it leaves your vehicle control volume, there's no much, whatever happens to that propellant is not going to affect your vehicle. So if it decays down after it's already exchanged your momentum, then that's the approach that we were looking at. And then this is a picture down here that shows an annihilation that took place, seeing the pions splitting apart there. Okay, now propulsion concepts, there's different ones. Solid core, this is where you use the annihilation energy to heat a heat exchanger, and then you have your propellant flow through it. You see 1,000 seconds, that's based on using hydrogen. That's propellant because it has low molecular weight. If you get into higher molecular weight propellants, that ISP starts to drop. Can somebody give me a water bottle or something like that? Thank you. There's gas core. That's where you can exchange your energy in a gas, have it in your thrust chamber, and then let the hydrogen flow around it and come out. So all your nuclear reactions take place there, and you get like 2,000 seconds. So the limits you have here is your melting temperature, your material, because it is a heat exchanger. So you're not going to get much higher than that. And again, there's a picture you guys showing about nuclear thermal. We're working on that too. In fact, outside of our facility, I have the only nuclear thermal engine that we made. 55,000 pound thrust one with a 1 gigawatt reactor. But it operated in this mode. Now the ideal mode is to operate like this, where, like I said, you have these pions leave your vehicle control volume, and the velocities, were pretty high. This is where you have the possibilities of getting close to speed of light velocities with your exhaust, and that's what gives you that high ISP. So we were looking at, okay, well, what's the next thing we need to? Oh, I'm sorry. And then there's hybrid applications too. This is where you use antiproton annihilation to help trigger a reaction to fission or fusion, combination of both. And there's various possibilities there. The only thing that was realizing was that if you shoot antiproton at a material, it doesn't annihilate instantly. It has so much kinetic energy, it's got to slow down, and then when it gets captured into the atom, that's when it annihilates. And they were looking at using that for medical applications for treatment, deep down in the brain or elsewhere, to have it control the kinetic energy so it stops in the target that you want to treat. So you can use that same technique on pellets based on the material that's there, how much kinetic energy is that antiproton being going to need to penetrate the material before it slows down and annihilates in the region that you want. Okay, so we wanted to get some experience with handling and storing antimatter, get an estimate on the cost, what's it going to take to do this, and do some small-scale annihilation experiments to validate a lot of these studies. Okay, so the first thing we made was this high-performance antiproton trap. I've got other pictures of it, but this is pretty much the backbone of the system, where you have a cloud of antiprotons stored in this section. We have 4 Tesla superconductors that contain it radially, and then we have these electrodes that contain it axially. We keep the temperatures as close to absolute zero as possible, so we have liquid helium, liquid nitrogen. And then to simulate antiprotons, to practice, the validation of the trap, we have an ion source over here. We can have H plus or H minus come through, and this would go up to 50 keV, so we were simulating the kinetic energy we would get at Fermilab to capture the antiprotons. in the trap. The trap was designed to hold a maximum of 10 to the 12 antiprotons, and for, I think it was maybe about 2/3 of a month time frame. Again, it's a cutaway that shows this is the main zone where the antiprotons would be stored. Okay, this shows the picture of the system. This is the ion source over here. This is a snout beamline that has these INSO lenses to help focus and guide it into the trap. And again, for storage, you don't want any residual gas, so we were getting down to kind of like 10 to minus 12. And the trick you use there is you have these super cold walls, and that helps you keep that temperature down and the pressure as well. And again, this was designed to be portable because we wanted to transport this around. And I'll show you what we were doing there. Okay, this was a facility that we had made at Marshall. And this was a special area that was designed for antiproton annihilation. And we were having an 18-wheel trailer that was pulling into the back here, special fenced-off section, to do annihilation test in this room at the same time to practice with anti-hydrogen production. When we were talking with the Department of Transportation, there's no regulations for antimatter shipment, so we had to. So the thing we had to go by was radiation levels. If we had a worst case, like the trap failed and we had all that annihilation, the rads, the gamma rays that would come off, we would have shielding on the side of the trailer. So if some bicycles was there, they wouldn't get any radiation exposure. And if we had like 10 to 10 quantity in the trap, the energy equivalent to that is a 60-watt light bulb for half a second. So it's not like it's going to explode, with the quantities that we're going to transport. Now, antimatter, is produced, here at Fermi Lab, Brookhaven's, able to make some. CERN overseas, Europe is able to. With particle accelerators. We were working with some small businesses that were trying to see that it was for science. That's the primary purpose for the facility. And so, since most of the science projects are complete, they're trying to find other uses. And so, they're trying to look at different ways that you could decelerate the antiprotons because they're at such high energy. In fact, we were designing a trap to capture them at about 20 keV level. So you've got to really slow them down and cool them down, to capture them. The crudest decelerator was a block of tungsten that, you'd have a lot that would be wasted, but enough would get through and slow down that would be captured into the trap. And like I said, there's small businesses that are working there, working arrangements with Fermi Lab to do that kind of thing. Now, the cost, I think, did I say it up here? It's pretty costly for antiproton production, and so we did a cost analysis in the past. If we improved the facility, let's say a $50 million investment, then we could have $64 million per microgram. Now, based on the facility capabilities as of today, to fill that trap with a 10 to 10 antiprotons was about $3,000. So that was okay for our experiments, but if you want to get into larger quantities, that's when you would have to eventually even have a larger facility that can bring that cost down even further. And then this is a chart that shows based on the quantities. And that was the thing is the quantities of antimatter that's produced, varies, with time. So we wanted to see, okay, we're kind of we're in this region right now on production. This is total production. So like if you capture everything, there's a lot that's wasted in these facilities that we could perhaps make use of the small quantity for some of these hybrid. That's what these are. These are kind of the hybrid fuel resources. You get into micrograms, milligrams. Like I said, on the cost to modify the facility to do that. But eventually, if we could have, kilograms, to metric tons, this is what I was working with Les on a long time ago, then you can have just 100% antiproton beam, for your high velocity or your high ISP. And that's what you can get into real good interstellar travel there. So that's what this chart was for, is just based on the quantity of antimatter you have, how can you best use it. And so, based on the limitations, you can focus right up front on some of these hybrids, and then as the production of antiprotons improves, then you can use more and more of it. But like I said, the shipping of it is a little tricky because of the radiation release. So when you get into larger quantities, you have more difficulty there. And also let you all know, when I work on fission engines, nuclear thermal engines, the quantities that we need in one engine of highly enriched uranium-235 is a category B. So national security coverage, because there's wrongful uses, of the material. So the coverage, the guarding of it becomes more of an issue. So what I was thinking of over the years, maybe some of you have saw something like this too, is if we do have a more efficient way of producing large quantities, because it is so hazardous and needs security, perhaps a facility on the moon. Another reason to go to the moon is to produce large quantities there. You're in a vacuum, low temperatures, and you can use solar power or other nuclear resources there to do that. Seems to be best that way. The security parts, and you're going to use it for interstellar flight anyway, so might as well have it already up there to use. So you don't have to worry about all the failures of transporting it up and all that kind of stuff. And the other thing we can do up front is you can just go to thermal level units high energy, slow it down and maybe just do some annihilation experiments directly with the beam that that's operating right now. I think that was about all that I had. Any questions? That's one thing. A production facility on the moon would be excellent. And plus, there's helium-3 on the moon. I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of good uses for propulsion. In all tests, some of these ion thrusters, electron propulsion, they have to have these big vacuum chambers, and you can't have it too high a plasma open cycle run before the chamber pressure gets too high and you start diffusing your plasma. But if you're on the moon, you set it outside, the thrust isn't high enough, it ain't going to go anywhere. Just have all kinds of engines on the moon's surface just firing, and you just go walk around and check it out. It just seems like that there's a lot of good uses of that helps us mature these propulsion. Again, I've been on this for 25 years, and I've seen lots of hurdles, and there's still a long ways to go, especially the nuclear. But the antimatter is the ultimate energy source. I think everybody agrees to that. And I want to keep my eyes open too on this dark matter. There may be some other resources we could use out there too. But as of right now, we know the physics of this. And again, anti-hydrogen, we can make large quantities of that. That trap that we made was just for antiprotons, and it has a limit on how many you can store in there, that Rion limit. But if you started making anti-hydrogen, you can store larger quantities, and then how do you extract the antimatter off of? You have a chunk of just ice of anti-hydrogen. How do you vaporize the outer surface and extract it from your resource, your reserve, for your propulsion system? So there's a lot. There's still a lot that you can do there.
Any other questions?